Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to take you on a little tour of my language bookshelf, which contains all of my books that are either in another language or used for language learning. You can see that I have my French books on this side and my Japanese books on this side, and I have a pencil case separating them, though you will notice that there's a book that's a bit of an odd one out. I'll talk about it later. And I'm basically going to take you through all of the books here and how I use them in my language learning. I'm going to start with the Japanese books since there are few of them. Okay, so I don't have a lot of books in Japanese for two main reasons. One is that I haven't really studied Japanese that seriously, and I don't really think I'm going to study Japanese very seriously in the future. Japanese for me is just a sort of fun way to watch videos and read online articles and stuff like that. I don't really have any serious plans for it, so I don't need any textbooks or novels. And the other reason is because I live in the UK and shipping from Japan is really expensive, so I don't really buy a lot of books. So the first couple of books I have are the main Tobira textbook for intermediate to advanced Japanese and the grammar workbook. I actually won these in a speech contest that I entered way back in March of 2021. I won first place and this was part of the prize. And I haven't really made good use of it. Like, I was actually planning on reselling them because I was at a way more advanced level back then, and then I just couldn't be bothered to use textbooks for a long while. But now I think I'm actually going to go through them. You can see that they're basically completely empty. I haven't gone through anything, but I do like that they have a lot of native content and a lot of exercises. I don't like the fact that they explain stuff in English though. It's a bit of a pet peeve. I started to use the grammar textbook a bit more because my grammar is absolutely horrible, but you can see I also haven't gotten very far through this one either. But at least now I think I'm actually going to use them instead of just having them sit in my room all the time. Next I have these three books. I haven't finished any of them, but I'm planning on finishing this one this quarter and possibly this one this year. I bought this one first and it's called Koro no Kite Chi no Wana. And personally, I find it really quite boring. Like, it's quite short, which is good, but I really struggled to get through it, and I don't think I will. Then maybe once I'm done with the other two, I'll give it a shot. I'm also just realising now as I'm editing it that it's actually two separate books in one. Like, Koro no Kite is one book and Chi no Wana is another. I'd never gotten far enough in the book to actually notice that it was two separate ones. And it's also interesting that this book in particular is read from left to right and the words are written horizontally, while in the other two books it's written vertically and it's from right to left in the traditional Japanese style. The one in the middle is Hoshi no Oji-sama, which is the Japanese version of Le Petit Prince, and that one's really easy to read and it has furigana, so I definitely think I'm going to be getting through that one quite quickly. This one on the left is Yogisha X no Kenshin, The Devotion of Suspect X. I've heard it's really good. Like, I was looking online for interesting Japanese thrillers and this one came up, so I'm really looking forward to reading it. It seems quite difficult because there's no furigana and it's a full-length novel, and my Japanese kanji skills and just in general my Japanese has gotten a lot worse, but I think it's going to be a lot more interesting, so it's going to push me to want to get through it even though it's difficult. Next I have these two notebooks. This one is my main Japanese notebook. I use this to take notes from the Tobira textbook and also from the books when I read them. You can see these are me answering exercises from the Tobira textbook. I'd also make notes from news articles that I read, though you can see that I haven't done that for quite a while. I put the title of the news article and then all the words that I learned from it, and I would always look up the definitions in Japanese. So this became a sort of vocabulary notebook, so that's the only thing I've really put in here, though you can see grammar point as well. I started taking notes from the book that I was reading, though I ended up giving up, because all of these words that you see right now are from the first paragraph. Like, it was incredibly difficult to read. I haven't gotten very far through this, but I'm going to continue using it in the future. Next we have this little notebook. Now this notebook isn't specifically for Japanese, I also have French stuff in it. It's just a sort of diary. Like this is where I write my Japanese entries now, and it used to be where I wrote my French entries, but I moved that to another notebook that you're going to see later. So as you can see, I would write the date, the day, and here's some French entries. And then I just write, I tried to fill the whole page, but sometimes I couldn't because my Japanese was that bad. I forgot to mention this notebook when I was talking about my Japanese notebooks. I thought it was a French one, but it actually wasn't. So this one, I started to write journal entries in it. And it started off as a sort of daily journal when I was really bored. And you can see I was writing fairly long entries, which is interesting because now I struggle to get out a paragraph. But you can see that sort of stopped when I got tired of it. And then I started using it for notes. Like these are from the Riki Nihongo Dayo YouTube channel, which I'll link in the description. They have really good videos that explain grammar and vocabulary. And I was using them when I was preparing for the N2. And I would also watch videos from Tanaka Atsuhiko no YouTube Daigaku, and the YouTube channel that basically makes videos about a bunch of different topics, usually related to like books or series or media. And this video, for example, was about Romeo and Juliet, and I took a bunch of notes from the video. And here's another Grammaire video from Riki Nihongo Dayo. And for once I was actually keeping to a theme and using the pink and black. And here I'm using Nihongo no Mori. And also writing down some kanji that I was struggling to remember. And also Nihongo no Mori makes these videos about songs. So here they did a song from one of my favourite artists, Kenshi Demo, and they basically go through and they explain all of the difficult grammar and vocabulary in the lyrics. So I really enjoyed like this type of video from them. As you can see, I took a lot of notes and I was learning a lot from it. And here's another song. And Nihongo no Mori also made a video where they went through a bunch of Japanese poems, I think, or Japanese literature, and that was really interesting. They did it like it was an actual Japanese lesson taught in Japan. This book isn't filled up, but that's what it was used for. So those are all my Japanese books, and now we're going to move on to my French books. The only other language related book that I have that isn't French or Japanese is this copy of The Egypts, which is the Twits but in Scots. I got it a really long time ago because I live in Scotland and there's this big initiative to try and push people to learn Scots as it was becoming an endangered language. So I got this copy of the book. It's all in Scots and I've read it a couple of times, though I don't really speak Scots at all. Scots is recognised as its own indigenous language in Scotland. It's not the same as Gaelic, but it's not very widely spoken, so there have been a lot of efforts to try and preserve the language and the culture surrounding it. There are so many that I'm going to split it into 3 categories: textbooks, notebooks, and books. So starting off was all of my French textbooks, and this is a lot, but it's not even all of them because I left behind all of my beginner textbooks at my parents' house. And these are just all of the ones that I use right now, apart from these alter ego ones, but I just haven't really gotten around to getting rid of them. So we're going to start with these alter ego textbooks, therefore the B1. I got them when I started taking lessons at the Alliance Française for the B1, which I was actually doing to prepare for my GCSEs in French. Personally, I only ended up taking the lessons for a couple of weeks, so I didn't get very far through them with a teacher. And I don't think they're very good for self-learning because I really struggled to use them properly. But I do think they serve as a good reference for B1 vocabulary and grammar, so I do use them sort of as a reference rather than as a proper textbook. I don't think I've used them to their full capacity yet because there's still some things in there that I didn't know, so I can still get some more use out of them. One thing I don't like about them though is that they both have CDs. They both use CDs for their audios in the exercises, and that's really annoying because my laptop right now doesn't have a CD player, so I had to put them in my mum's laptop and then download them and then transfer them. And it was just really annoying, and like for a textbook nowadays it really shouldn't have a CD player. This textbook was released in 2013, so I understand why it has a CD, but still it's just a bit convenient nowadays. I got the DELF 100% réussite textbook for the B2. It's the main textbook I'm using to prepare for the DELF B2 exam. I haven't gone too far into it, but as of so far I'm really enjoying it. I think it's super useful. It has a lot of exercises and the audio is online, so I can use it a lot easier. That's actually part of the reason why I got it, because the other textbook that I was considering, the ABC DELF, has a CD and I can't use that. It also has this neat trick where in order to get the audios for the exercises, you just have to go on the site and scan the pages, which is really handy. The other two books that I have that are specifically for the DELF B2 are these two about the written and the speaking parts of the exam. I know that these are my weakest points, so I got these books to help me with them. And again, I haven't really gotten very far through them, but I really like the way they're structured. I think they're really helpful. They're both entirely in French, which is really useful. And they have a lot of tips on how to structure your writing or your speaking and on what to do during the exam. I recommend both of them, but it depends on what you're struggling with, because I actually think that the same tips can be applied to both the speaking and the writing parts of the exam, because they require similar skills. The next textbook is called Débattre, Elle. It's for the CEFR levels, B1 to C2. And this is sort of a general guide on how to debate, which I think is super useful because it can be used in both the speaking component and also the writing component, because you do need to know how to structure your arguments like a debate in both of them. And it's basically just a guide to argumentative writing or speaking. It's really well structured, and it's a fairly new textbook that came out recently. It has a bunch of tips which focus on specific parts of debate writing, like talking about positive emotions or giving examples or things like that. And then afterwards it gives you actual debate topics, and then it gives you a bunch of vocabulary related to that topic, then a bunch of exercises, and then eventually you have to answer the debate question. That's a really good way to learn, and it has a lot of examples that are commonly used in B2 or advanced level exams. And it's again one of my weakest points, which is the reason why I got this textbook. These textbooks get recommended a lot, and I can see why. They're really helpful in practicing your different skills in French. Like I got the grammar and vocabulary books because I think those are the points where I really need to focus, but they have other books for spelling and communication and other things. So I got the grammar book, which is from B2 to C2, which is the highest level in the grammar series, and it's a really fairly thick book. I've been using it quite a bit and I really enjoy it. I think it has a good balance of easy and more difficult exercises. And one interesting thing about this textbook is that it covers a lot of very basic topics, but that's like the whole point. Like it's all about perfecting your skills. At a high level, you're not actually really expected to know anything different or new or crazy. It's just like you have to know how to do the basics really, really well. And that's what this textbook teaches you. So it isn't like it starts at a B2 level and then by the end of the book it's a C2 level. It's all about training yourself to stop making mistakes on very basic topics. I personally don't think I'm going to finish it because it does have a lot of exercises, but I want to get through every single chapter and do at least like one exercise, and that'll be enough. And then when I'm studying later, I can go back through and go through the other exercises. One thing I really like about it is that it has a page on the left which gives explanations and examples of the grammar, and then on the right it has the exercises. The exercises are grouped by topics, and at the end of each section there's a little test. I also got the vocabulary version of this series, and this is not the highest level. This is from B2 to C1.1, and there's one from C1 to C2. I think this was definitely the right level for me. When I'm going through it, there are a lot of words and expressions that I already knew, which makes me a little bit tired of it. Like, I don't use the vocabulary book as often as I use the grammar book, and I think it's because it's a bit easy. But there's also the fact that I'm fairly good at learning vocabulary by myself. I struggle with grammar because I find it difficult to practice grammar by myself, but for vocabulary, I can make it work with like flashcards or writing them down after seeing them in an article or things like that. So I don't really need a vocabulary book, but I got these anyway, and I do think I'm going to make good use of it. Although I don't learn a lot of new words, there are a lot of expressions that I don't know, and that's what I really learn from these. So it has the same format as the grammar book. It gives you the vocabulary on the left. You can see that the new vocabulary is the stuff in bold, and it's usually given in the form of like a story or a comic, or it's in a more engaging format than just a list of vocabulary. And they don't usually define them, they usually use them in examples to help you understand. Then on the right there are all the exercises. If you're going to buy them, make sure, know that you'll have to get the corrections separately if you want to have the answers to the questions. I also seen a lot of people in the reviews who buy this corrections book and then, without realizing that it is a corrections book, and then get really mad and give it a low review because they were lied to, even though it says very clearly that it's just the answers, and it does say on the listing that it's the answer book. So make sure that if you're going to buy this book or any of the books in the series, because this one also has an answer book, that you're getting the actual exercise book if you want it, or the answer book if you want it. I love notebooks and I have so many of them. All of these are just for French, and I have many more that are just unused. Though I like to separate a lot of the things that I do into separate notebooks because it feels weird to have to jump back and forth to look at one specific thing that I'm doing. But that does just mean that I end up using way too many notebooks and not finishing any of them. You can see here I have 7 notebooks, and I'm going to show you what I use each of them for. We're going to start with this notebook. So this notebook is really old, I got it a long time ago, and I initially started using it for Japanese. As you can see, I was following the Nihongo no Mori and 2 video. But then I decided I'd rather use it for French because I started this MOOC, which is a massively open online course, and it was basically teaching you French, and it was like an 6-week course, and there were a bunch of videos and exercises to go through. So I went through that, and I was keeping notes of every week, and it was really good. I think I learned a lot from it. I can't remember the name though, so I can't really tell you what it is. Yeah, I went through all the weeks. And then I started writing song lyrics because I think I intended to look through them, like to look up any words, but it turns out that a lot of them were quite easy and I didn't even need to look up any words. And then I started using Japanese again. So this book is a mix of the 2 languages. So I started doing it with Japanese. And then I've come back to doing French. This is when an album I really liked called Coeur. I was obsessed with that album for a long time in 2021, I believe. So I took the time to write and look up all the words in all of the songs on the album. Then after that, I started doing a couple of exercises from the Alter Ego book. And then I just started using it for random writing exercises. And then I started taking a different MMOC, though I didn't finish it. So this is just the things I learned from that one. This is a very random book. I was just sort of doing everything in French and also occasionally in Japanese in it. This is when I did a writing challenge, which I made into a video on my channel. You can see I was writing a full page every day to try and improve my writing skills without realising that I might actually have to learn something in order to improve my writing skills. I couldn't just write. And I'm doing another writing exercise. I decided to write a letter. And then now I just use it for my goals. Like you can see, these are my Q1 goals. And here's where I wrote my Q2 goals. And that's what I use this for. I also made notes about the subjunctive at the back. And that's basically it for this journal. The next notebook I'm going to talk about is this one, which is also a very random notebook. It has a lot of Japanese, a lot of me just testing pens, a lot of just random scribbles. It's just kind of a everything and anything notebook. But I did make some notes in here too, so I'm going to show you those. This is where I started to transcribe songs in French. Usually I'd only do that in Japanese, but I decided to give it a try. And you can see I've made corrections overall it's not as difficult for me to do this in French than it is in Japanese. Then after that, I don't know if any of you guys have heard of it, but there's this podcast that's based on a fictional town called Nightvale. It's a very good fictional podcast. I've never actually listened to it in English, but it's available in English. There's this fan translation made in French, and I listened to the French version. There was a transcript provided, so I would write down all the words that I didn't know from the transcript. And I think near the end I started just reading it because I'm not as good at listening as I am at reading. Set up like a radio show almost. And then there was a bunch of random stuff, and you can see that there was another translation that I've done here. I was really just using this notebook as whatever I wanted, so a lot of the notes are sort of scattered in between. I also use this book for Japanese, so it's not exactly just a French book. And this is where I started writing down the words for my new book, but I transferred that into a different notebook I'm going to show you later. But that's basically it for this notebook. The rest of it is empty, or it's filled with notes that are completely irrelevant to French or Japanese. Next up we have this notebook. I initially started using this notebook when I started my classes at the Alliance Française, the one for the B1 and one that I used the alter ego textbook for. So you can see that this is the title of the first chapter of the alter ego textbook, and I would do the exercises and take notes. So my notes are quite ugly, and you can see that I'd also get corrections from my teacher. And this is me practicing for my French GCSE. And here you can see, after I stopped taking my language lessons and I passed my GCSE, I decided to change this notebook into a Japanese notebook and use it to write down song lyrics. But that didn't last very long. I only did one song, and then I was like, no, let's keep this French. It doesn't make sense to switch languages halfway through the journey. So then I started using it to take notes of new vocabulary from the book I'm reading, which is Secte, and you may have seen this in my videos, but yeah, this is where I write down all of my vocabulary from the textbook. And I think that's what I'm going to continue to use it for, just for vocabulary from books. The next textbook I'm going to talk about is this really cute one I got from Paper Chase. My intention, I haven't really used it that much, but my intention is to use it as a way to practice my writing. Like you can see, I've chosen a topic about the age of retirement in France, and I'm going to write down a bunch of information on it, and then I'm going to write the actual piece, and that's what I'm going to fill this notebook with, just my writing pieces. And I'm going to use my textbooks as help, like the textbooks that I have, obviously. Like that's how I got the ideas for how to plan it out, just from the textbooks that I bought. Writing is my weakest point, and it's also something I don't like to do. I'm going to try and pick it up more seriously though. The next notebook is this one, which is also from Paper Chase, and in it is a sort of general notebook that I'm going to use for my DELF B2 studies. You can see here I'm going to take notes from my textbooks from it, and I've got my 3 textbooks here. The vocabulary one, the DELF 100% réussite, and the grammar one. I just take notes of the words I didn't know. The pen is really light so it doesn't show up well. And I also write down passages that I find really interesting. And I've dedicated a colour for each section. Like the blue is for the compréhension orale, and the pink is for the compréhension écrite. And then this brown is for the grammar workbook because it's brown. And I intended to use purple for the vocabulary notebook, but I don't think I'll even have to take any notes from it. But yeah, I haven't gotten very far through this notebook either because I don't like to take notes. Like these notes here are just me doing the exercises. Like it's not even taking notes really. Because the notes are in the textbook, I don't see why I'd have to copy them down somewhere else. So I don't think I'm even going to make it through this book during my B2 studies, but it's here. Also, it's really fun to decorate it. Next I have these 2 tiny notebooks. This one, the screen one on the right, is one I used to write down vocabulary from the first book that I read, and also just random vocabulary from other notebooks. I would say it's basically a vocabulary notebook, though I don't use it that much anymore. I would write vocabulary from news articles of the different things that I read, or even just expressions. And it isn't full. This notebook is a sort of 2023 daily planner, but I use it as a journal, a daily journal. I write in French only. I have a rainbow theme for no particular reason, I just thought it was cute. And I've been writing daily since the beginning of the year. So yeah, those were all of my notebooks. Then we're going to move on to my books. I've been talking so long that the sun is setting, but finally we've come to my immense collection of French books. I have these 7 books, but I still have 6 more that I would really want to get, and I've read one of them. This is the only one that I've read, and I've almost finished this one too. And after, I think I'm gonna go for this. There isn't really much to say about it. I basically just looked up best-selling authors in France, and that's how I ended up with Maxime Chatham and Michel Bussy. And that's why I bought those books. But then the Brûlée Vive, I was watching a video about honour killings and someone recommended this book, so I decided to get it. It's quite small, which is good because I can finish it quite quickly. And this book, I was watching another video by a French booktuber, I suppose, and they recommended it too. It seems to have a really interesting concept. Like, it's all about the person who didn't get chosen to play Harry Potter. It starts in 1999 and it follows the story of the casting for Harry Potter, and in the end it comes down to 2 people, Daniel Radcliffe and someone else, and this follows the story of the person who was not chosen to play Harry Potter and like how they navigate their life, I suppose, which sounds really interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna get through all of them, though I'm really struggling to get through this one. I've been going through it for like months now because it's huge, like it's bigger in size to all of the other ones. And it's also a lot thicker. It's actually just huge for no reason. Most of these I bought secondhand off Amazon. I'll leave the links down below to all the books I have. I haven't read all of them, but I can recommend this one that I have read. It was really interesting. So essentially that's everything on my language bookshelf. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.